The woman who is perfect for one man can be terrible for another. Not because she's a bad woman or because he's a bad man, but because compatibility isn't universal. The same woman can make one man more grounded, more confident, more aligned with himself, but she can make another man needy, controlling, or completely disconnected. So many men don't understand this. They ask questions like, is she attractive? Does she like me? Is she a high quality woman? Whatever that means. Those questions are not useless, but they are incomplete. The better question is, what type of woman actually fits the type of man I am? Because the best woman for you is not just the woman you're most attracted to, she's the woman who complements your strengths and does not constantly trigger your blind spots. She helps you to stay aligned who you actually are. And the worst woman for you is not necessarily a bad person. She's the type who weakens your strengths, compounds your blind spots, and pulls you into a version of yourself that you don't want to be. And that's what this video is about. The best and worst female archetypes for each of the 6 male archetypes. So let's get into it. I have done previous videos on male archetypes and female archetypes separately. You do not need to watch either of those videos to follow what I'm talking about here, but I will link to them at the end of this one so you can go deeper if you have interest. The 6 male archetypes describe the type of man that you are most likely aligned to. So the king is structured, decisive, direction-driven, and very much goal-oriented. The warrior is action-oriented. He is competitive. He is disciplined. He is a fighter. The scholar is observant, analytical, and pattern-focused. He's the guy who likes to go deep and discover things about women. The lover is emotional, expressive, and connection-driven, whereas the explorer is curious, spontaneous, and very much freedom-oriented. And lastly, the provider. The provider is the reliable, responsible guy. He focuses on security and long-term potential. The 5 female archetypes describe how a woman tends to relate to men and what patterns she's naturally bringing into the relationships. First is the romantic. She is emotional, she's future-oriented and invested in love as a story. As I like to say, she's in love with being in love. Then you have the nurturer. The nurturer is caring and supportive, empathetic, and also relationship-focused. The independent is wildly different. She is your bad boss bitch. She is assertive. She is autonomous. She is self-directed and direct. Then you have the social butterfly. This is your party girl. She is expressive. She is high energy and playful, and she likes to bask in attention. And lastly, you have the avoidant. She is emotionally private. She's slow to trust, and she's the type of girl that is self-sufficient and needs more space. Now, the key to understand is these are not rigid boxes. These are just tendencies. They are patterns that show up when someone is being most naturally themselves. And the compatibility is what happens when the 2 patterns meet. So, one more thing before we go into the archetypes. When I say best match or worst match, I am not talking about subjectively good women or bad women. Every archetype has its values. Every archetype has its strengths. Sometimes the worst archetype can actually still work out, and sometimes the best archetype may not work at all. In general, I am talking about fit. A woman who is perfect for the warrior may be terrible for the scholar. A woman who brings out the best in the explorer may destabilize a provider. That's not a judgment of her, that's just how archetypes interact. So when we go through this, the question is not, is she a good woman? The real question is, does this dynamic between us help me become more aligned or less? Does it help me be a better man? Most men evaluate women in categories. Is she hot? Is she not? Is she easy? Or is she difficult? Is she the type of woman who's feminine or masculine? And the classic, is she wife material or not? And honestly, some of these categories do have their place and they're not unimportant, but none of them actually answer the question that matters. Does this woman bring out the best version of me? Or does she pull me into my worst? Because the same trait that makes you feel powerful can become your greatest liability depending on who you are around it. Some women bring out your leadership. Some women turn your leadership into control. They make you a tyrant. Some women bring out your passion. Some women turn your passion into neediness. This is the key distinction. A good match does three things. First, she complements your strengths. She does not compete with the things that make you powerful. She does not punish the thing that makes you attractive. And most importantly, she does not require you to become a different kind of man to keep her. Second, she does not constantly trigger your blind spots. Every archetype has weaknesses. The right woman does not make the weaknesses a central dynamic of the relationship. She may challenge you, she may stretch you, but she's not constantly pulling you into a state of compensation where you have to overcome your own weaknesses. Third, she helps you stay aligned. She helps you to feel more like yourself around her and not less. You become clearer, more focused, and not confused. You become more grounded and less reactive. You become more sure of yourself around her. The wrong match does the complete opposite. She weakens your strengths, she compounds your blind spots, and pulls you out of alignment, often without either of you realizing it. Again, it's not that these people are bad people. They're not trying to pull you out of your center or make you someone that you're not. It's just when you are around these people, their strengths, their personality, the way it interacts with yours makes you less aligned. So here's the part that most men miss. The wrong woman for your archetype is not always the woman you're least attracted to, or even the least compatible with. Sometimes she's the woman that you're most drawn to because she activates a part of you that is the least resolved. So the king may be drawn to a woman who constantly challenges him because she makes him feel like he has to prove his authority. The provider may be drawn to a woman who makes him earn attention because it activates his belief that love comes from effort and provision. The scholar may be drawn to emotionally unpredictable women because she gives his mind something to resolve. That is not chemistry. That is your blind spot being activated. So, as we go archetype by archetype, do not only ask, which woman do I like? You need to be asking, which woman helps me to be more aligned? Or in other words, helps me to be more of myself. Now, let's go through each one. A quick note before we do, though, I will point you guys to a self-assessment tool that I created at the end that helps you to figure out where you're aligned and where you're not, and I'll talk more about that later. So, the first one is the king. The king is structured, he is decisive, and he is direction-focused. At his best, he brings the leadership, he brings vision, he brings order and stability, and the ability to make decisions and move things forward. This is the kind of guy that creates structure. He knows where things are going, and he knows how to take it there. He leads not through force, but through clarity. His blind spot, however, is control. When the king feels out of alignment, his leadership becomes domination. He becomes a tyrant. His standards become rigidity, and the direction becomes emotional detachment. He becomes so focused on creating order and plans that he stops connecting. He's no longer present with her. He leads the household but loses the relationship. So the king does not need a woman who simply obeys, who follows his every command and every whim wish. He needs a woman who responds to his direction, but has enough depth and emotional centeredness to keep him emotionally present. In other words, she needs to be the one to slow him down if he gets away making plans and constantly trying to move things forward. So, who is his best match? The romantic. The romantic is emotional, future-oriented, and deeply invested in the story that they have between the two of them. She wants to feel chosen. She wants to feel like the relationship is moving somewhere, that there is a direction, that there's a plan, there's a future. She wants emotional security alongside of that direction. This works really well for the king because he naturally provides exactly those things. He gives her a sense of future because he's always planning. He gives her a structure that she can relax into. And he makes the relationship feel intentional, not random. And in return, the romantic does something important for the king. She pulls him into emotional leadership, not just arbitrary strategic leadership, not just doing this, doing that, right? She helps him become a more emotionally present version of himself. She does not need him to be strong. She needs him to be emotionally present. And that is great for the king because his growth is not only learning how to lead, it's learning how to lead without becoming cold or detached. The romantic gives him a reason to make his structure emotionally meaningful. The second best match for the king is the nurturer. The nurturer is caring, supported, empathetic, and relationship-focused, much like the romantic. She works well with the king because she supports what he is building. She adds warmth to his structure. She provides a stable, emotional home base for him. She provides care to his direction and his plans without directly competing for it. And this can be a very strong, very complementary dynamic. But there's a risk that the king needs to watch out for. If he becomes too focused on missions and plans and responsibility, he may start treating her like it's just part of the system, that she's just always there. And that's where the resentment slowly builds. The nurturer is a very good fit for the king, but only if he stays emotionally attentive and does not confuse her consistency with low maintenance. Always, always tend your garden. So, what is the worst match for the king? The worst match is the independent. Why? Because the independent is your bad boss bitch. She's very assertive, autonomous, she is direct, and she's highly capable on her own. She really doesn't need him. With the king, this can very easily become a power struggle. The king naturally wants to lead, but the independent naturally tests his authority. When both are healthy and secure, this can create mutual respect. But if either one of them is misaligned, the relationship kind of becomes a battle over control. Again, imagine you have two alpha dogs that are just going at it all the time. He feels constantly challenged, and she feels constantly managed or dominated. He tries to create order, but she resists being contained in that box. He becomes more rigid as a result, and she becomes more critical of him, and the whole relationship falls apart. His strength becomes his blind spot, and his direction becomes control. He becomes a tyrant. That is the trap. And what is the second worst match? It's probably the social butterfly. The social butterfly is expressive, she's high energy, and very often enjoys a lot of social attention. This is the kind of girl who's probably going to have a lot of male friends and female friends. She's going to be going out and doing things spontaneously all the time. For the king, this can trigger his need for order. If he is not secure in himself, he may start trying to contain her. He monitors her social behavior. He becomes irritated by her social freedom. And this makes her energy a problem that he tries to manage. And I have seen this countless times with a king type of guy and this type of woman. The more he tries to control, the more unstable the dynamic becomes. His insecurity shows up as authority. Again, he becomes a tyrant. He becomes a dictator. He tries to assert more control so that he can lock things down into a predictable, plannable state. And that is not leadership. So, what is the king's diagnosis? If you are a king type and every relationship feels like a battle for control, you may not be choosing women who respond to your leadership. You may be choosing women who force you to prove it. And if you have to constantly prove your authority, you're already out of alignment. Your best match is not a woman who challenges your right to lead. It's the woman who allows your direction to become something meaningful. Number 2, the warrior. The warrior is action-driven. He is competitive. He is disciplined, and he is intense. This guy is the fighter. He is the soldier. At his best, he brings confidence and resilience. He brings execution and absolutely follows through. He also has a refusal to sit around waiting for permission. This is a man of action. He does not hesitate. He performs well under pressure. However, his blind spot is aggression. Even when the warrior falls out of alignment, everything kind of becomes a competition. I know that I've mentioned in the past, but a warrior is like a hammer, and when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So for a warrior, everything becomes a competition or a way to prove himself. He turns relationships into something that he has to win. He confuses his intensity with purpose. This can cause him to become emotionally unavailable without realizing it, mistaking disconnection for strength. So the warrior needs a woman who can handle his intensity without becoming fragile, but also without turning the entire relationship into a combat. So what is his best match? Honestly, the independent. The independent works well with the warrior because she has a backbone. She's assertive and direct. She respects competence and strength. She's not easily overwhelmed or destabilized. This creates a natural tension for the warrior, and tension matters. He does not want a relationship that feels too soft or too passive or too easy. He wants to feel like the woman across from him has her own will, and the independent gives him that. She pushes back. She respects strength. She challenges him. And when he meets that challenge with confidence rather than control, that creates real attraction. But there is something the warrior has to watch. The point is not to defeat her. The point is to respect her strength without turning it into a competition. When he is aligned, this dynamic produces a lot of mutual respect. She feels his strength. He feels her independence, and both feel like they've earned each other. The second best match is the social butterfly. This one actually surprises people, but for some reason, it works, and I see it quite often. The social butterfly brings energy and playfulness and movement and social aliveness. She's fun and expressive and really gets people going. She keeps things from becoming stale or too heavy or too serious, which the warrior has a tendency to do. He's too mission-focused. He's too intense. The social butterfly pulls him back into his own life. She reminds him that not everything has to be a grind. Not everything is a challenge. But this only works if the warrior does not become jealous. The social butterfly naturally draws attention, and the warrior turns that into a competition, trying to out-attract or control her social behavior. And he loses alignment from this very quickly. He starts fighting for attention instead of leading through confidence, and those are not the same thing. The worst match for the warrior, believe it or not, is the romantic. The romantic needs emotional security. She needs consistency and a sense of future. There's nothing wrong with that, but the warrior can start to feel like this is emotional weight. He may feel like he is constantly being asked to slow down or to soften himself or to manage her emotional state in some way. And if he's not mature, she starts resenting her for having needs. He becomes blunt or dismissive. He withdraws from emotional conversation, or he treats her sensitivity like weakness. This pulls the warrior directly into his blind spot. His strength becomes harshness. His discipline becomes unavailability, and his confidence becomes contempt. That is not strength. That is a man who cannot handle emotional complexity. The second worst match is the nurturer. This pairing is not always bad. Some warrior-nurturer dynamics absolutely do work, but the danger is that the relationship becomes too comfortable. The nurturer supports it, cares for him, makes his life easier, And if the warrior's not grounded in a clear purpose, this comfort can breed complacency. I have seen this time and time again in my own life, where warrior type guys that I know meet a amazing girl to settle down with, and she takes care of everything, and he kind of gets lazy. So it's not necessarily that the relationship dynamic breaks down, more so that the dynamic that he has with his own life kind of breaks down. In a worst case, he may also start taking her for granted because he's not challenged enough to stay sharp and to stay present. The warrior needs support, but he also needs some challenge, something to overcome, something that helps to build the relationship. A relationship that only gives him comfort will slowly dull the thing that makes him who he is. So the diagnosis on the warrior is if you keep feeling like women want you to soften before they respect your strength, you may be choosing women who need emotional safety more than they respond to challenge. That does not make them wrong, but it means that the fit is wrong. Your best match is not the woman who makes your intensity a problem. It's the woman who respects your strength and gives it somewhere meaningful to go. Number 3 is the scholar. The scholar is observant, analytical, perceptive, and focused on understanding people. At his best, he brings deep awareness and insight. He brings a high level of strategic type thinking and generally social intelligence, the ability to see things that others miss. And he notices everything. He thinks very carefully before acting, and he understands nuance. His blind spot, however, is overthinking. So when the scholar falls out of alignment, he tends to get stuck in his own head. He analyzes things instead of taking action, and he turns every situation into a problem that needs to be solved. In dating, this becomes his biggest liability, because where the scholar can turn a woman into a puzzle, things like, what did that text mean? Why did she all of a sudden go quiet? Was that, her signaling something, or is it just something that happened, randomly? He's always looking for patterns. So he stops relating to her and he starts studying her. His awareness, which is his greatest strength, becomes a loop that he cannot exit. So the scholar needs a woman who grounds him emotionally and does not constantly overstimulate his analysis. Who is his best match? The nurturer. The nurturer is warm, emotionally intelligent, caring, and steady. She works well for the scholar because she brings him out of his head and back into the relationship. She gives some emotional grounding, not more complexity. She makes connection feel like something to experience, not something to decode. She creates a safe emotional environment that does not demand performance. This is what the scholar actually needs. He doesn't need more stimulation. He already has plenty of that internally. What he needs is a woman who helps him trust the emotional reality in front of him, to get him to stop constantly observing things from a distance. The nurturer makes him feel received. She gives him enough safety to act and not just to analyze. So the second best match, believe it or not, is the avoidant, because the avoidant is independent. She's emotionally private and slow to trust, but she's also self-sufficient. And she can work well for the scholar because she creates space. She does not demand constant emotional expression or attention. She allows the relationship to unfold slowly. She does not overwhelm him with intensity early on. And this pacing is very comfortable for the scholar. But there is a risk here. Her emotional distance can easily become a puzzle, and the scholar may get quietly addicted to figuring her out. He may invest more time in trying to understand her avoidance than in actually deciding whether the relationship is actually working. This match only holds if the scholar remains grounded in action. He cannot let her emotional privacy become an excuse for his own. So, what is the worst match? The worst match is undoubtedly the social butterfly. The social butterfly is high energy. She is expressive. She is socially active and naturally draws a lot of attention. For the scholar, this creates an overload of data. She's talking to multiple people. She's getting lots of attention. She's being playful in a way that may or may not mean anything. And the scholar starts tracking everything. Who was that? What was that flirtatious, or just her personality? And she's interested, or is this just how she is? What is the signal here? Now, his strength, pattern recognition, becomes his downfall because his awareness turns into obsession. He's no longer in a relationship. He is running surveillance. The second worst match is the romantic. The romantic could also pull him into overthinking, but through emotion rather than social stimulation. She has emotional highs and lows, and he reads into these signals. She may need reassurance and emotional attunement, and the scholar responds by trying to solve it. Instead of being present, he becomes diagnostic. Instead of leading, he starts interpreting. And instead of connecting, he starts managing the emotional state or the emotional meaning. So in the relationship, this quickly becomes exhausting for both people. So the final diagnosis for the scholar is, if you're in a relationship that feels like a case study, you are not in alignment. You are in your blind spot. The right woman for you does not make you feel like you need a spreadsheet to understand everything. She helps you to stop analyzing long enough to actually participate and actually be present. Number 4 is the lover. The lover is emotional, expressive, present, and very much connection-oriented. At his best, he brings charisma, emotional depth, warmth, genuine presence, and the ability to make a woman feel truly seen. He values beauty and intimacy and loves creating moments. He feels deeply and is not afraid to show. His blind spot, however, is neediness. When the lover falls out of alignment, his emotional depth turns into dependence. He overinvests and seeks validation. He becomes attached too quickly and starts needing her to reflect his value back to him. He stops showing up as a man who loves, and he starts showing up as a man who needs to be loved to feel okay. So the lover needs a woman who can receive his emotional depth without making him chase emotional availability. And for this reason, his best match is the nurturer. The nurturer is emotionally receptive and caring and relationship-focused. She works beautifully with the lover because she can receive what he gives. She values connection and warmth. She reciprocates care naturally, and she does not punish or dismiss emotional expressiveness. The lover does not have to perform indifference with her. He does not have to suppress the part of himself that wants closeness. He does not have to beg for tenderness. She receives him, and because she is emotionally grounded, she can match his investment without escalating the dynamic into codependence. This can create a very warm and emotionally rich relationship. But the lover still has to stay in his own center. He cannot become dependent on her nurturing. He cannot make her emotional care responsible for his own stability. The nurturer is a good match because she wants to receive his love. She thrives on it. But he still has to remain a man who has his own foundation. The second best, by only a very small margin, is, as you would guess, the romantic. This pairing can create a lot of emotional intensity. The romantic believes in love as a story. She's in love with being in love. The lover wants that. He wants something deep and meaningful. Both value intimacy and a lot of emotional investment, which complement each other very well. When both are grounded, this can be a beautiful relationship. But it can also become too merged. If neither person brings enough structure, the relationship becomes all feeling and no direction. It becomes highly connected, but it also becomes unstable. This is where codependency works its way in. The romantic is a strong match for the lover when there's enough maturity. When both are unresolved, however, it can become emotionally consuming. So, what is the worst match for the lover? As one might guess, the avoidant. The avoidant is slow to trust, emotionally private, and uncomfortable with vulnerability. For the lover, this dynamic can become addictive. Her distance activates his pursuit mechanism. He gives more, she pulls back. He tries to create closeness, but she needs space. Eventually, he feels rejected and she feels pressured. This is one of the most painful loops that a lover can get into because he starts confusing the emotional unavailability with depth. He thinks, if I can just get her to open up, it will really, really be something special. But that is what his blind spot is talking to. The more she withdraws, the more he invests. The emotional depth becomes neediness. His presence becomes pursuit. And his love becomes self-abandonment. And the second worst match is the independent. The independent can make the lover feel judged for his emotionality. She may value autonomy and self-possession more than emotional expressiveness. And if the lover is insecure, he may interpret her style as rejection. So he suppresses himself. He acts colder than he is. He tries to perform some amount of detachment. He becomes less expressive to seem more appealing to her. And this is not alignment. This is not becoming a better man or become a better version of himself. He's becoming less and less connected with himself. The lover's diagnosis. If you are a lover and you keep ending up with women who make you beg for emotional access, you are not being romantic. You are abandoning your alignment. The best woman for you is not the woman who makes closeness feel like something you have to earn. It is the woman who can openly and willingly receive your emotional depth without turning it into your weakness. Number 5 is the explorer. The explorer is curious, spontaneous, freedom-driven, and experience-oriented. At his best, he brings energy, creativity, and adaptability, a sense of aliveness and possibility, and the ability to make life feel like it is an adventure. He is not trapped by convention. He likes to move and create experiences, and he's always and insatiably curious. His blind spot, though, is avoidance. When the explorer falls out of alignment, he runs away from structure instead of creating it. He avoids commitment, but he calls it freedom. And he moves on when things require consistency. This is not being free. This is fleeing. So the explorer needs a woman who can support his movement and his autonomy without letting him disappear into chaos. So, what is his best match? The social butterfly. The social butterfly brings movement and energy and social aliveness. She likes experiences and people. She is spontaneous and expressive, and she can enter the adventure with him. This fits the explorer so well. He does not want a relationship that immediately feels heavy or predictable or overly domesticated. He wants shared experiences. He wants spontaneity. The social butterfly can match that energy. She keeps things fresh. She keeps things moving. She makes him feel alive. But there's a real risk, and that is that both of them can really lack grounding. If neither person brings intentionality to the relationship, it may be fun for a while, but at some point it starts to feel hollow. Freedom is good. Movement is good. Experience is good, but without direction, it becomes empty. The explorer needs to bring something purposeful to his dynamic. He cannot rely on energy alone or presence alone to hold things together. What is the second best match? The independent. The independent respects autonomy. She has a life of her own opinions, her own direction in life, her own goals, ambitions. She's less likely to need constant reassurance or togetherness. She gives the explorer room to breathe, and that space matters to him. He does not feel smothered. He does not feel like the relationship demands that he give up freedom. But the risk is different here. Both people can become too separate. If the explorer uses her independence to avoid intimacy, then the relationship becomes parallel lives, not a shared story. This match works when freedom is balanced with intentional connection. The worst match for this type of guy is the nurturer. The nurturer is caring and warm and emotionally invested. But for the explorer, her care can start to feel like containment. She wants to invest and support. She wants to build consistency. She wants to know the relationship is going somewhere. And if the explorer is not ready for that, he interprets it all wrong. Her care becomes pressure. Her support becomes expectation. And the emotional investment feels like a loss of freedom. And that pulls him into his blind spot. He avoids. He distances. He becomes inconsistent. He starts looking for an exit. That is not freedom. That is a man who can't sit still with intimacy. The second worst match, for a lot of the same reasons, is the romantic. The romantic wants emotional direction. She wants to generally know where things are going. She loves a love story. She wants to feel chosen and moving towards something together. Again, none of these things are unreasonable, but the explorer is still searching for himself. Her need for certainty can feel like a wall to him, like he's being boxed in. So a lot of times he sort of explains things, maybe even to himself, with vague answers. He keeps things open-ended. He enjoys the connection, but resists defining it. And that becomes painful for both people. She wants more, but he can't give it to her. And neither person is wrong. It's just incompatibility. If you are an explorer and every relationship eventually feels like a cage, that problem may not be the commitment itself. The problem may be that you're choosing women who need stability before you've built any direction of your own. The best woman for you is not going to be a woman who removes your freedom. It's going to be a woman who can join your movement while still encouraging you to become intentional. And the last one, number 6, is the provider. This guy is reliable, responsible, security-focused, long-term oriented, future-driven. At his best, he brings stability and consistency. He brings devotion and investment, the kind of dependability that holds a relationship together over time. He builds, he maintains, he follows through. He shows love through effort. However, his blind spot is overgiving. When the provider starts falling out of alignment, he starts trying to earn love through effort. He gives more, he sacrifices more, he becomes more useful instead of being desired. And the resentment quietly builds because he's giving from a standpoint of approval seeking and not strength. He stops being a man who provides from a secure foundation. He becomes a man who's trying to buy his way into emotional safety. So the provider needs a woman who values his investment without making him feel like he has to earn her attention through effort. And that brings us to his best match. His best match is the romantic. The romantic works great with the provider because she gives his consistency emotional meaning. She gives value. She values commitment. She values the future. She values being chosen and cared for. The provider wants to build something stable. The romantic wants to feel like the relationship is moving towards something meaningful. Those two fit together very well. His consistency makes her feel secure. Her emotional investment makes his effort feel appreciated and not just functional. Not like a human vending machine. This is very important for the provider because when he is aligned, he does not provide to earn love. He provides as an expression of it. The romantic helps him stay in that mode. She gives his effort a story, and that's what makes it feel worth it. His second best match is the nurturer. This can be a very stable pairing because both are care-oriented. The provider gives the responsibility, while the nurturer gives the emotional support. Both value investment, consistency, and relational thinking, but there's a risk that they both need to watch. And that is both can be overgiving. Both can self-sacrifice. Both can build a quiet resentment if they feel unappreciated. This match works well when both people have clear boundaries. The provider has to provide from strength, not approval. The nurturer has to provide from love and commitment. When both are grounded, this is one of the most stable relationship dynamics in this entire framework. So, what is the worst match? You guessed it, the social butterfly. The social butterfly draws attention, enjoys social energy, but can be inconsistent where her focus lands. For the provider, this activates the worst version of himself. He starts asking, how do I earn her focus? What do I need to do? What do I need to give to her? What do I need to do to become the obvious choice? And now he's not providing from strength, he's performing for attention. So he spends more, he plans more, he gives more, he works harder. But underneath all of it, he's just trying to earn value. That is the provider's blind spot in full effect. The social butterfly can trigger it consistently. The second worst match is the avoidant. The avoidant triggers overgiving in a different way. She's emotionally private and she's slow to trust. She may pull away when things get vulnerable. The provider may respond by doing more reliability, more patience, more helpfulness, more usefulness. He thinks that if I just prove myself or give enough, she will open up. And that becomes a trap. His effort is no longer coming from strength, it's coming from emotional bargaining. He's trying to buy access with reliability and provision, and it rarely works. So, what's the diagnosis here? If you are a provider and you feel like you have to earn love through effort, you may be choosing women who activate your weakest pattern. The best woman for you is not the woman who makes you prove your worth. It is the woman who values your investment without requiring you to abandon yourself or abandon your goals for you to get it. Now, what is the pattern here? Look at all 6 of those pairings together. There is a clear pattern. The best match for each archetype is not necessarily the easiest woman. The worst match is not necessarily the most difficult one. The best match for all of these guys is the one who helps him stay aligned. She's the woman who brings the best out of him. And the worst match is the one who pulls him into compensating for his weaknesses. This is how you have intentionality with your relationships, by choosing the right type of woman. So for the king, the wrong woman turns his leadership into control. For the warrior, the wrong woman turns his strength into harshness. The scholar, the woman turns awareness into obsession. The lover, the wrong woman turns depth into neediness. For the explorer, the woman turns freedom into avoidance. And for the provider, the wrong woman turns provision into approval seeking. This is the pattern. And here's what that means practically. Stop only asking, am I attracted to her or is she attracted to me? And start asking, what version of me shows up when I'm around her? That is how you evaluate compatibility, because the wrong woman doesn't always look wrong at first. Sometimes it feels exciting. Maybe she feels like she's the missing piece to your life. Sometimes she feels like the woman who will finally prove that you're enough. But if the relationship keeps pulling you back into your blind spot, that's not alignment. That is a pattern repeating itself with a new face. Now, earlier I mentioned a self-assessment, And here's what that is. Before you can understand what woman is best for you, you need to understand what kind of man you actually are. That is what the VSN assessment is for. VSN stands for value, story, narrative. Your values are what actually matters to you, what drives you. Your story is the life you're building. It's the role you're playing and the direction that you're moving in. Is the version of yourself, of your character that you are living towards. And narrative is how women experience you. It is the impression that your behavior creates and the things that you communicate. Most men are deficient in one of these three things. They think they know what they value, but their choices don't reflect it. They have an idea of the life they want, but they're not actively building it with intention. They believe that they come across a certain way, maybe confident, maybe grounded, but in the dynamic that they create with a woman, it tells a completely different story. So if you don't understand where your gaps are, you're going to keep making the same mistakes. Things like, choosing a woman simply based on her attractiveness or some chemistry or maybe even some unresolved trauma. And you may keep ending up in the same dynamic with a different woman. So the VSN assessment is free when you sign up for the Men's Lab newsletter, and it will help you with all of these things. I'll put a link in the description. So the important thing with all of this is not to obsess over where you fall or where she falls in the table. That is not the point. The point is to understand the principle behind it. The right woman helps you become more aligned, and the wrong woman pulls you into your blind spot. The thing you need to understand is that people aren't just archetypes. There's more to people than that. There's a lot of other dynamics that I can't talk about in a single video. So understand that just because she may be this archetype that, or you may be that archetype, there's some other qualities, other things going on that may pull you out of alignment or push you into alignment. The right woman helps you become more aligned. The wrong woman pulls you into your blind spots. And once you see that, once you evaluate your relationships in that way, it changes everything. Because you're no longer just asking, do I like her or does she like me? You're asking, what dynamic is this creating? And that is a much better and much more sustainable question. And that's exactly what leads to the right choice. My name is Ethan, and I started the Men's Lab to help men like you get results through alignment. If you want a full breakdown of male archetypes or female archetypes, I've done previous videos on each, and both are linked here. And if you want help identifying your archetype, understanding the patterns that you keep choosing, and figuring out why the same dynamic keeps repeating itself, I'll put a link in the description so you can work with me directly. If this video was valuable, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.